Hey, Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Kevin. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. How are you doing today? Your week going well?
Doing great. Yeah, doing great. Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking with Henry earlier. Henry, for those listening, helped schedule this podcast, and he was mentioning, cannabis seasons can get crazy in the fall time because there's harvesting, there's just so much going on. So I'm excited to be talking, about Jushi today and all the things that you have going on this year and especially in the future. But before we start with that, Jim, I want to get a sense of your background. So from what I've read in your bio, you have a hedge fund background. You invested multi-billion-dollar hedge funds, and that's kind of path has led you to where you're at today, where you're the CEO, chairman, and founder of Jushi. So why don't you talk to us about your background and how that's prepared you for what you're facing now in the legal cannabis industry?
Yeah, great. I went after my initial job. I went to Harvard Business School and then got into investment banking. And luckily, I didn't enjoy that too much. It was really awful experience. And after about a few years of that, I just really had some good fortune to get into the hedge fund business in the mid '90s. And I got into an area called distressed securities, where you invest in companies that are turning around, and you need to get in and really sometimes take control of the company. So it developed into sort of this private equity kind of background, where you basically reformulated the board. And I personally went on a lot of boards. I did a big casino company that was very regulated, so similar to cannabis. It was big company, big chemical company. I did that as well, and there was other ones. And I also started my hedge fund, so I ended up running these companies. So I got familiar with running businesses, as opposed to just trading. And then about 2000 sort of 10 11, I sort of decided I want to get out of that. There was enough of that. I wanted to do something different. And so instead of it's a tough time back then after the crisis, and I was just like had enough. And so I took some time off and kind of dialed it back at about 2014. And I sort of got into investing in cannabis. A lot of people came to me about this. I was running my family office kind of thing, and I invested in a bunch of situations, probably about 25 situations. And it, I really got a good sense of it, really enjoyed it. And then I thought that in about 2017, the best opportunity was sort of in the US, in the grow side and retail, but there wasn't any like public vehicle to do it. I didn't have any good investment opportunities. So I decided to start a company, and that's how Jushi was founded.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's a burgeoning industry. There's lots of opportunities, especially in your previous position, being an owner of a hedge fund and understanding investments and opportunities. Did you also have a personal relationship with the plant at all? I mean, do you consume regularly?
Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed it quite a bit in college, and I lived in New York City post college, so it stayed available back in those days. What the products, was terrible, and then I, was very, seedy and just twigs, and you had to, roll the joints yourself, and it just was like not a very good product back then. But I enjoyed it. You never know what you got. It was kind of like it's just what it was. So it's it's much different. I lost touch with the product in my 30s, and as I started to have a family, and then now it's a much different product. I really enjoy now, because I'm more health conscious. The gummy experience,
Right.
just as a way to consume it. And I, of course, I dabble in the flower products, vape products, just to try it out. And the product is so great now compared to the old days.
Right. Yeah. I mean, any older people, that I'm not saying that you're super old, but I mean, in that generation where they experience 60s, 70s, even 80s cannabis or weed, like you said, very brick kind of weed, seed, stems, all the above. So the science and just the innovation in this industry has just light years. I mean, in where we're at today. And that kind of brings me to my next topic, and that's talking about Jushi's brand portfolio. I know it's pretty vast. So let's kind of kick it off there to set the foundation for those maybe unfamiliar with Jushi, talk about the brands, and then we'll get more into the nitty gritty in terms of overall revenue and performance.
So listen, I think of the brand two different ways. One is the retail brand. We have a great reputation. Our biggest state retail is Pennsylvania. We always do really well in Google reviews, and one of the highest, if not the highest, in the state. I'm not sure if it's still that way, but it was for many years. So that brand is called Beyond Hello. So you'll find that in Pennsylvania, just 3 jurisdictions in California, Illinois. There's some great stores. Some of the best stores in the state are our Beyond Hello stores, and then Virginia, we're really growing those, and Massachusetts, we're rolling out that name soon. So that's number one brand, and then the stuff we produce. We have 3 or 4 different brands of gummies. It's Tasteology. It's great. Some of the best technology and formulations out there. Vapes were very well known for a product that came out of Colorado a long time ago. It had huge market share in Colorado, really controlled the live resin market. It's called a lab. And our products right now in vapes, the hydrocarbon product, which are live resin and concentrates, are very popular in Pennsylvania, getting great reviews. And then also we've recently the first one in Pennsylvania to offer rosin products, which are solventless, so the healthiest products because there's no additives, and that those products are killing it, in the reviews. So that's also under the lab name. So that's a very well known name in concentrates and the vape. On the flower side, we have 2 brands. Sachet is our fun brand where it's less expensive. If we're allowed to sell it in a 1/4 ounce form, we do, and it's what we call it the C bud or the fine grind, and it's what's available after you get the A buzz, which is the bank product. So we have tons of new genetics coming, so that's changing rapidly, that brand, in terms of what we're doing. We're offering tons of new genetics in our markets, specifically in Pennsylvania, where we maybe have the longest history with that product, and then Virginia as well, and Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm. So Jim, tell me, obviously with this being a burgeoning industry and other MSOs out there, what differentiates Jushi from the competitors?
So, so from an investor standpoint, I think the biggest differentiation for Jushi is the management team, the quality of the management, given the size of the company. We're the smallest of the top 10 MSOs, and I think we have and I think this is, and obviously I'm the CEO, and a lot of the people in the senior management team are friends of mine, and we work very closely together. But it's easy for me to say that, but it's really true, and it's somewhat widely recognized in the industry. For a smaller company, we punch way above our weight. And I think the second thing is our footprint. We are heavily geared to states with really great things in terms of regulatory change and growing the fastest. So one of the states we're most well known for is Virginia. We have an exclusive right to serve Northern Virginia. So we have these fantastic stores in Fairfax and Alexandria, Arlington. You see these great places where cannabis is very new. It's a very young program. Only like 1/2% of the population is in the medical program. In a state like Florida and Pennsylvania that are more mature, it's like 3 or 3.5%. So we have a long way to go as a medical program to grow, and they took away patient cards. They changed the laws. It started July 1st, and we've seen our business, I think, these numbers aren't official, but more or less triple, in a pretty short period of time. And it just my gut feel of what it looks like. And it was off a small base, albeit, but people are super excited about the program. There was a big backlog of people who couldn't get cards because it was hard to get cards, and the regulator didn't want to have to do that anymore. So they were the ones behind changing the law. So that's just really exciting. Something we're very well known for is that growth that we're going to see in Virginia. Virginia, the legislature passed adult use a couple of years ago, and the governor signed it. So we have adult use starting in January of 2024, and that's super exciting for a young medical market to go adult use. So if you think about that dynamic and the fact that we're in Northern Virginia, we're the only retailer there, that's just a great place to be. I think the second thing, footprint-wise, we're known for would be Pennsylvania. We have 18 stores, which is a huge base in Pennsylvania through affiliated entities of ours, and then we also have a very large grower processor that is just turning out this great new genetics, this great new live resin product, and solventless product. So we're super excited about that. And then the third one that's a smaller, that we're not as known for, but I'm just gonna say that people ought to look for this, is in Ohio. There's some really good things going on there. They're trying to change the medical law there to make it a better law, easier for people to access with better prices. And we're opening a new store in Cincinnati area. We hope to open 4 more in the next 12 to 18 months, and we expect to be a big player in Ohio as well. So that's, of our 6 or 7 states, I think it's 7 states, we have 3 super exciting growth states. Pennsylvania should go adult use at some point in 2024. We don't know that. There needs to be legislation, but that's what most people think it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, I want to press further and talk about, like, it's incredible, like Jushi's ability to pounce and be agile, but at the same time have the foresight to know which markets to enter. So I'd love to hear the recipe on that. But before we do, I'd be remiss to ask this one question specifically about Pennsylvania. So I got a tweet or a response from a tweet, and it was asking about, you mentioned management being a differentiator. So the question was the decision to hire Scott Paterno, who is Joe Paterno's son, as a PA lobbyist, who at the time was also lobbying against medical grow for patients, from what I understand. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
what was the decision there?
Yeah, I don't know what he was lobbying against, so I can't talk about that. I mean, I don't run government relations. I don't know. That doesn't sound right to me, but I'm just going to let that one not comment on that, because I don't know much about that. But we hire a lot of people to help us in different states. We're looking to improve the medical programs when there's a medical program, and provide as much access as possible. At Pennsylvania, they don't have gummies, for example. There's no pre-rolls, and they're missing some gaps there. So we're trying to improve medical programs, and we also try to educate the legislators about what adult use could look like and why we think it's a good thing. So we do that across our footprint, and so that's all that is us looking to educate people.
Got you. Okay. Well, thank you for addressing that. So let me go back. So what's the secret sauce? I mean, having the foresight, I mean, is it the management team, the leadership that is, on the ground, kind of seeing these opportunities and being proactive in strategy and execution to then expand? I mean, what is the secret sauce?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, listen, I think it's really hard work and motivating a good team, is a lot to do with it. But also, there's some luck involved, just, getting into these good states. Virginia was considered a sleepy medical market. People weren't paying attention to it. And we said, hey, this is a really good value. So we're kind of going where other people aren't going. So at the time when we started the company, there was big pressure to go into Florida and New York, and we really don't succumb to that pressure. We actually had a minority interest in Florida, a minority interest in New York, about almost 20% of a license, one of the 10 licenses, and we had a deal in Florida. We had a management contract managing a business where we had a right to buy it. We turned around and got significant money for both of those assets. And in New York, I think we quadrupled our money in a very quick period of time, maybe tripled. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was 9. All I know is we agreed to sell it 9 months after we bought it. We went the other direction is because we thought they were going for too high a price. So we don't get pressured. We're very flexible. We go both ways. And in Florida, we exited that market and did quite well in that as well. And those have been really, New York has not worked out from a medical market standpoint. There's too big an illicit market. It's too sophisticated. There's until very recently, they weren't allowing flower, which is like 50% of the market. If you can't get flower, people aren't going to even walk into the stores. And so, it was just destined to lose money. I call it a license to lose money. And people might call it a limited license to lose money, very limited license to lose money. But either way, you were going to lose money. And we decided to exit there. And Florida, if you look at companies that are well respected, like a GTI, for example, they haven't not spent a lot of money on the Florida license they bought at the time we sold. We didn't sell to them; we sold to somebody else. But it was just a tough market to be late in. Trulieve has just opened so many stores, and Curaleaf. I mean, the people who had an initial start, there is no cap on stores. So it's just a whole different animal for a new company. It just represented too much risk, too much capital up front. So we went in a different direction. With that proceeds that people thought we were going to invest in those two markets, we turned around and did Virginia, and we did retail in Pennsylvania, and that's before Pennsylvania was popular. So we got, through affiliated entities, we got 6 licenses for 18 stores, and we picked it up for $80 million, and people were spending $80 million on just 3 licenses a couple of years ago. So we got in really well in the right market. So it's really kind of going with what you see, going for value, going away from the crowd, not toward the crowd, not being a lemming, not being the last in, not just following what other people are doing, just kind of going your own direction. So I think that is being very decisive. And then what we've done in the last 4 years is just stay really focused on that asset base. We kept investing in that asset base. We didn't acquire a revenue producing business of any magnitude until late last year. Was our first one. And at that time, we had been in business for almost 4 years. So that's pretty significant. And so going in that direction, building and not just following, I think was the key.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And that kind of translates into other aspects of life, just keeping the blinders on, not getting distracted by the competition or what others are doing, and just remaining focused. I'm a big proponent of that. And so, but I also imagine, in your position, you have to deploy specific strategies for each state, when it comes to building versus acquiring a license, investment opportunities. I mean, run the gamut, right? So is that where, I guess, the management comes in and having the right expertise and people in place to do that?
Yeah, I think that's what makes it really tough for, small companies and single state companies have it a little bit easier. But when you do small MSOs or even big MSOs, but the smaller MSOs, it's tough. You're in multiple states. I like to say each state's like a separate country, right? Because it is. It's the border is secure in cannabis. You can't go across border. There is this illicit market that does that, but that's obviously we're in the legal regulated business, and all of us, I believe, I know we do, but I believe virtually the whole industry plays, by the rules, meaning each state is a separate entity. So you need people who understand that state in every which way, and each market is different. So it takes a lot of effort and work and people, quite frankly. So getting to the scale where you could effectively get to the revenues and cash flows to sort of amortize that knowledge base and expense base over is very, very key. Yeah, so I think it makes it really hard. It's one of the things that makes this business, super hard. And you're doing that in a federally legal business, which just poses huge barriers. It's kind of like, you're every time you turn around, there's a barrier you have to sort of figure out, what to do. Banking is, highly publicized. The fact that we're not listed in the US, making capital raising very difficult is obviously a huge problem. But also the R&D, having to do it in different states and you get your bank accounts closed personally. I mean, the employees of ours, including myself, by the way, bank tries to shut you out, just for being in the business, which is legal, by the way, in 35 states. So it's really perverse, trying to be in this business and kind of what they do to you. It's just so behind the times.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they run operators through the ringer. You talked about the struggles with banking, but then you've also got the 280E, tax provision. You've got
that's terrible. Yeah, that's awful. That's like confiscation.
It's crazy, right? I mean, to your point, 35 states that are legally operating either in a adult use or medical, fashion, and it's wake up.
And when you look at the political, you don't need to take polls or anything. Just look at it. When it goes up for vote in like swing states, Like people think Florida's conservative and Ohio's conservative now. They used to be swing states. I guess they're not swing. Florida's definitely still a swing state. I'm in Florida, and I mean,
I
DeSantis
thought
barely
Florida
won
was a red
governor. He
state.
barely won governor. What's that?
I've always known Florida to be red. I don't know. I mean, for the past
Yeah,
decade.
that's what young people think. But Florida used to always be with the winner in the presidential elections. So it wasn't until recently that, and I think that was actually since this election that actually a president won without Florida. Obama carried Florida. Both times, I believe. But maybe the second time he didn't. Maybe that's why everybody believes that. But before that, George W. Bush carried Florida. Clinton carried Florida. George H.W. Bush carried Florida. Ronald Reagan carried. Everybody carried Florida that won. And DeSantis got elected by all of 20,000 votes or something in this last election. So it's quite bipartisan. And then when it voted in Florida, cannabis passed by like a lot. I mean, it was like close to 70%, I think. Ohio used to be a swing state, but it's not. It was the same thing was true of Ohio that I just said of Florida, but I think it's gotten more conservative than Florida even, and that would pass by mid-60s when they went to the vote. So in these states that are considered conservative, it passes.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I don't even I'm more on the libertarian side, so I'll just put that out there. So I don't side with party when it comes to Republican or Democrat, but when it comes to cannabis, I think it's a bipartisan issue across the board. Like, I never correlate.
Yes.
Yeah, I never correlate like a hardcore Republican to be like who's just a regular voter to like hate on cannabis and all that, unless they're just completely older, like our great grandparents' age or something, But if you're
but Ohio and Florida represent our country is still somewhat conservative. I mean, you saw the recent laws on abortion, and people worry about changes in great progressive things that have happened in the gay marriage front, and so it's a slightly conservative, which are Florida and Ohio, and they vote well. That's a good representation of it. And by the way, you have legal cannabis in Arkansas, 3% medical population. You have 3% of the medical population, which is very good. That's a mature market. In Missouri, these are considered more conservative states than Florida. So it's definitely bipartisan. You don't have to look at California. You don't have to look at
right.
I mean, it's totally bipartisan. And so it's crazy what's going on. Hopefully we'll see some federal legislation before the end of the year, and make it easier on us all.
Well, and it gets messy at the political level, I think, because to your point, the people are on board. We see it in the polls. We see the public support. What is it? Over 60% now. But where I think the waters get muddied is when the politicians leverage this topic to politicize it. And obviously there's big money behind those lobbying efforts, right? But so an example is like Nancy Mace. I had her on my podcast a couple of months ago, and she mentioned that.
I didn't know that. Wow, I have to watch that. Yeah.
Yeah, and in the episode, she mentions that during her race in South Carolina, her opponent used cannabis as an issue against her, but it backfired on her. So it's troublesome because it backfired, of course, because again, the people who are voting don't care about cannabis. They want it legalized. And so they're muddying the waters and they're making it confusing for the people because they're making it an issue still. You know what I mean? Like they just need to get their shit together and just get this thing passed, because there is much more good that comes from decriminalization or legalization as opposed to prohibition, without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, and quite frankly, there's a huge illicit market, and it's not the way, as a parent, you want your kids to be, involved with the product. If they want to be involved with the product, if you have a Snap account, you have access, right?
Right.
And so like that's not what you want, and somebody who's dealing in that level, has cash and they have a product with market value. So maybe they need Ignite for something. I don't know, like what's going on there, and quite frankly, the police force, they don't have time for this. They're all, underfunded and there's a lot more serious crime out there. And so they're not focused on this. And they randomly, bust people, when they pick them up for speeding or something, and they want to hassle them or something, or they smell it in the car. It's not because they're trying to. So for the small level stuff I'm speaking about, and so like it's just this is so old and cold as far as the politics what people want, and the politicians really need to catch up to what's going on, and quite frankly they're really making it super hard. And I'd like to point this out. I think some states are doing some great things with what they call social equity licenses, and that's where they're trying to give licenses to people who've been wronged by the plant, early in their lives, and they've served jail time, and it's ruined their lives. They've probably gotten divorced. They've probably lost their house and car and all these kinds of things. They're trying to get them licenses, and they're setting up processes. So New York is doing that. New Jersey is doing that. Illinois has done that. And just state after state is doing it or has done it. If public companies were people who were hedge fund people and went to Harvard Business School and have all this backing, or having trouble with 280E and banking, can you imagine what it's like for these folks? It's just like the federal government is tanking these people before they have a chance. You see in California all the time. You see these entrepreneurs who built some really nice businesses all over California, and they have a tough time making ends meet because of what's going on. They can't pay the taxes, and therefore they turn into another way to forcing these people to break the law. So it's just like it doesn't add up what's going on. So hopefully we'll see some change.
Yeah, no, you bring up really, really great points, and I agree with them. And it's actually a great segue, because I wanted to talk about Jushi's, initiatives when it comes to social equity and social justice efforts. Speaking of like those various states that are talking about social equity licenses and so on, is Jushi have any plans to partner with any of those social equity stores?
We have like the only state we're in that has that program into a big way is Illinois, and we've done it twice in Illinois. So we did it with the grower processor license, and we won one, and we did it with the retail store and won one. And we have a social equity partner who controls it, who we're partnering with, and we'll hopefully open both of those businesses relatively short period of time. And so that's probably the most visible thing we've done. We also are spending a lot of time. We have a legal staff of 6 or 7 people, and we're trying to spend time in the markets, trying to figure out other things we can do, like helping people get clean up their records. We talked about that. I think we've implemented some stuff. We get involved in the community, give money and time of our employees and ourselves of trying to help out in different ways that we can in the communities we're in. So we have like a myriad of different kinds of things we're doing. We come at it from a lot of different directions. But what we really, the big thing is to be in these states and actually help these people open up businesses. And Illinois is the one state we're in where we have that opportunity, and we've done it. We're new in Massachusetts. We've been there for less than a year, so we're looking into that. We're doing some things there. And Virginia, we're hoping to be able to do that there as well. So it's one thing we want to do is help people set up businesses with our knowledge and our resources, both financial and human resource.
That's great. Yeah, that's great to hear. So, getting back to the business operation. So, are there any other? I know you touched on some of these earlier, but are there any other organic growth trends within the company that you're seeing from your purview that you'd like to call out?
Yeah, I'd like to just reemphasize, Virginia is just the biggest organic growth that I've seen since I started this company. And as an investor, it's a business where they took away these cards, which was real impediment, because the Board of Pharmacy, which is the regulator for like CVS, you go back and you get your whatever medicine you need. It's an antibiotic because you have you have an infection or whatever it might be. It regulates those businesses. That's their primary job. And and they were given this cannabis business, but they don't know anything about cannabis. I'm not sure they even wanted it, and they were not given the resources to do it, and so it was really hard for them. But they really made good effort. I mean, they've done what they can, but there was a big backlog for cards, and they very intelligently, the Board of Pharmacy went to the legislators and said, we can't do this. Just get rid of these cards. Just let people do it. The industry wasn't the one behind that. It was a regulator who said, we're holding up commerce here. We're holding up the patients. We're holding up patient access. We're not set up for this. Because all of a sudden you take that regulator and now they have to process thousands and thousands of cards a month. So they got rid of that. All you need is a prescription. And now we've seen the business just flourish, where it was kind of struggling to grow because people couldn't get cards. You can't come into the store without a card before July 1st. So we saw in the second quarter of this year, 2022, when you needed a card, we thought 1,950 new patients in the whole quarter. We saw 2,300 new patients just in July. And I don't know the exact numbers, but that trend has continued where, every month you get, a certain amount of new patients. And so the business is growing quite dramatically. We're trying to open up our full allotment of 6 stores. We can do delivery as well. And we've invested in a grow processor that increased capacity by a multiple of 3.5 times. And we've completed that, substantially completed that. We need to just finish off a few things, and so we have the capability to serve this, and we believe that we're going to run out of capacity. I hope, but I don't, my guesstimate is that we run out of capacity at some time in the second half of next year, meaning that we're selling as much as we can grow. So we'll need a new investment project to expand that. We have 9 acres of land, and we can, we have plans, and I think we might have already submitted them to the regulators to get approval. I'm not sure exactly, but that's what we're working on. So that's the most exciting growth. And then the other growth that we're ready for is we expanded our grower processor, opened all 18 store licenses that are affiliated at entities control, and we've done that because we think adult use is coming. And quite frankly, we thought it was going to come, already be kind of there, not there this year, but, we've already talking about launching the program in 2023, but it's gone slower than we thought from a regulatory perspective. And I think the industry thinking right now is, it's probably gets approved in 2023 for 2024. I think Pennsylvania is really ready for it. New Jersey passed adult use, and you've seen sales grow. They have a big border, and a lot of people are going over to New Jersey because they don't want to get cards, and so they just go to New Jersey. So they're losing tax revenue. But on top of that, the industry is ready for it. There's lots of grower processors. Prices have come down. We all have expansion plans. We have expansion plans, so we'll be able to meet the demand. And there's if everybody opens up all the stores that they control, store licenses, there'll be over 200 stores. And it's a similar size state as to Illinois, and Illinois only had 55 stores when they went adult use. Now they only have 110. So I think the states really, of all the medical states, probably with the exception of Florida, it's really ready for adult use. And so that'll be super exciting for Jushi in the industry, and of course patients will turn into customers as well as patients. In other words, you call in the cannabis business, a patient is in the medical market, and the customer is in the adult use market.
Right. Yeah. Which is kind of like weird in a way. I don't know. I mean, I understand it because of like the medical programs that were in place and the cards, like you said, that were kind of required before, new advancements, but. Yeah, I don't know, like how that's going to shake out, the medical market versus the adult use.
Yeah, the way that works is so when you go adult use, medical cards tend to tail off, and you get a better price to have medical. That's something you get. And it's usually like lower taxes as well in a lot of states. So if you're a heavy user, like a lot of medical users, so like for example, if you've been into with Parkinson's, cannabis can really help Parkinson's patients. It's really incredible. they require very large doses and they use a lot of it,
That's
daily.
what I was going to ask. Is
So
the
they get a big
difference the
discount.
dosage?
Yeah. So they keep their cards because they save a lot of money. Now, if you take a more casual user, the cards are kind of expensive, and it's just a hassle to go get the card, and it's sort of, you have a job, and sometimes people look awry on cannabis. You don't want your name on the database or whatever it might be. Still a lot of old-fashioned people out there. So people don't get the cards, and so that's why the adult use market tends to really pop, and the medical market tails off. But you always have a strong base of medical patients of really people who could take advantage of the lower prices because they need to use a lot of it.
So yeah, that makes sense to me. And like, does it differ by state? Because I know that like Texas, for example, has the Texas Compassionate Program, and they've somewhat expanded that medical program. It's very limited in terms of the potency for THC. I won't get into that, but like to your point, in other medical programs, the potency level for some of those products are very high for people who have serious ailments that need them, like cancer or Parkinson's, and and the above. So in some states medically, do they just cap it at like higher potency for more severe illnesses for patients, and then kind of just let everybody else flood into the adult use? Or
Yeah, no, I don't know about all the states, but in our states, for the most part, and again, I don't do government regulation, so I don't know it all the top of my head. But for the most part, the dosing is regulated. It's kind of across the board. You're allowed to do up to this amount, or it's not regulated, depending upon the state. Like I forget what California is. We do have 3 stores in California, but and then so it's really the same in both. It's just what the patient is going to buy. But remember, a chocolate bar, for example, each one of those little, like, if you ever have a Cadbury, it's the one with those little squares. So
right.
you try to make your cannabis chocolate bars like with squares that break off, because each square is 10 milligrams, or if you want it to be 5, a low dose one, it's 5, right? And chocolate bars typically are 10, 10. Then there's 10 of those to make up 100, right? And that's one chocolate bar. And for a novice, that's one of the more misused products, because they eat the whole thing. And you have a real problem. So I really don't like chocolate bars for that reason. We make sure we educate our bud tenders to really, educate people. We try to educate on our website and everything. But those 10 milligrams, so there's ways to get a high dose, if you need it, without having to, and quite frankly, if the 10 milligram gummies, so you have to eat 3 of them or two of them or whatever. It's not that, that's, I eat magnesium gummies every night because it helps with your sleep. And they're if you read the best brand, you have to eat 7 of them, magnesium. And, it's kind of a nice little dessert before I go to sleep, and helps me sleep, the magnesium. So I think people are used to doing that in other parts of their lives. I take zinc gummies too, for my immune system, and I need to take 2 or 3 of those to get to the right dose. So people are used to doing that. So I would say, and a lot of these higher dose ones, like the gummies, because they kind of last longer and they come on slower, and it's kind of could be really good for some medical conditions. And of course, like for headaches, or if you get migraines, a vape's very good for that, and you can dose that as you need to. Because with the migraine, you need to hit it quick, and needs to affect you quick when you feel it coming on. You don't want to let it progress. So I would say, but to answer your question, the regulatory side, the dosing tends to be in most states pretty similar. And I would say states like Texas, it's not really a THC program. It's very low dose.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That program just encourages the patients to go into the illicit market, quite frankly. And so I would imagine, not knowing a lot about Texas, that there's this huge illicit market and a very small legal market.
Yeah, Delta 8 is really thriving out here in Texas, and HHC and all the synthetic cannabinoids that they're coming up with because of the federal illegality. And I've talked to lawyers here in Texas, just before we kind of wrap up, just let you know, and what they've said is it's not even a revenue thing. Like, it's total moral. Texas is a red state, very conservative, and these these politicians in office, they don't want it in the state. They don't care about the added revenue. I mean, Texas on its own is what, the seventh largest GDP in the world.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of their stance, and it's sad state of affairs, to be honest.
That'll change. It'll change. I think. I mean, I'm not sure when it's going to change. It'll probably be the last big state to go with a what I would call a contemporary, sort of well thought out law. That's progressive. That's not progressive from a political sense, but more in where the population is. I've met so many like Southern conservative Texans that use the product.
Yeah, they're everywhere around me.
Yeah, I know. So I mean, they got the cowboy hat, they got the boots, they enjoy enjoying. So but so like I don't think that they're in touch with their these politicians are in touch with their constituencies. So I think it will change, and it'll be a great market, Texas, but this is what we do, and part of like being like the great investor in cannabis is picking companies with these states that have, you don't want to be too early, right? But you want to catch it before it goes, so you have time to invest and you get the most upside for your invested dollar. One of the things we've been good at in Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, and so I think that Texas is one of those states where I'm very interested in, but it's too early right now. We quite frankly have better use for capital, but they'll come along. I wouldn't, the politicians will get there. I mean, and it might come along federally before it comes along in Texas, but and that would be a good thing for the industry too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we wrap up, Jim, I had just one more question that I wanted to get your thoughts on, and that's just the current state of the consumer. What trends are you seeing? Obviously, Jushi, as we talked about earlier, has footprint in multiple states as an MSO. So what trends are you seeing on the consumer side, and how does Jushi leverage data to kind of parse through and segment customer lists so that you can effectively reach your consumer base?
Yeah, so what you see in an early state like Virginia, which we went through with Pennsylvania a few years ago, because we were very early in that state, is there tends to be like huge amount of demand for wherever you can sell the customer until you get to a medical population, about 3% of the population. So, and then it kind of levels off, right? So if you get to about 3% of the population, Virginia's like at 0.5%. So that market, should have very fast growth, and they could be, not so sensitive to anything but having the access to the product, right? And the market could go up, what is that math, 6 times, right? A 6 multiple of what it is today before it starts to feel like, okay, it's gonna level off on the medical side. And then you go to adult use and it triples, the size of the market sort of overnight if you have the product to sell to those people. Typically you don't, right? Because you need to invest and get more capacity. So that's the overall sort of how the trend works. And once you get to a market that's more mature and in medical or adult use, what you see is right now today, the consumer or the patient is looking for a wide variety of products, right? They want to have different brands to choose from, and they want to have a lot of SKUs on the shelf. So they want to have a choice between hydrocarbon products, which are live resin, or distillate vapes, live resin concentrates, or even now solventless is a new product. We're on the forefront of that. We're the first company to offer solventless products in Pennsylvania. And we're commercializing, we're offering them now. It's a very popular product. We're getting great reviews. They also want to have a large genetic profile to choose from. They want to, experiment in different genetics, particularly in flower or vapes for that matter, right? They want to try different genetics. And so you have to be able to offer them lots of different strains. And they want to try new strains. So you have to sort of freshen it up from time to time, and take some down and bring some new ones up. And so that I think is what the customer want. Pre-rolls, listen, pre-rolls are really growing segment. If you can offer pre-rolls at a good price, it's just so much easier whether it's a single or a pack. I think that's a real big growing segment. I think beverages is a very small segment, and I think people are doing a much better job, particularly in the more mature markets and developed markets like California or Nevada. There's some really cool products out there, small size with two milligrams. So you can, instead of drinking beer, you can sit there and drink 2 milligram drinks. To put 2 milligrams in perspective, a typical gummy is 10 milligrams, a full dose gummy. So that's 5 of these drinks. So you can sit there and enjoy the beverage like you enjoy a beer, and some really nice, tasty beverages. So I think beverages will be very much of a growing segment. Gummies, I think, will be a growing segment too. It's a very healthy way to consume, and we're all figuring out ways for the gummies to get hit your system quicker, to come and go quicker. That's one of the problems. They come slow and they leave slow. So there are new technologies coming. It's not there yet. It's called nano, and it's not there yet, but it's getting better and better. So I think those are some of the trends, depending upon products, that I think are most notable. In today's world, with this inflation, the consumer's getting squeezed a little bit, or a lot in some cases, and then you're seeing a value product being important, offering value, and so there's ways to do that profitably, and we're doing that as well. Less of a focus on that, just the high and the middle end, but let's talk about a value product. That's what our sachet brand is, and we've had that for years now, and it's we can't keep it in stock, quite frankly. It's just selling out in the markets, in all the markets that we carry.
That was a great rundown, great overview of of consumer trends and what you're seeing, from your purview as CEO, chairman, and the founder of Jushi Holdings. So, Jim, really appreciate your time. Enjoyed your insights. Is there anything that you want to leave the audience with before we wrap up?
Kevin, I just want to thank you, and I thank everybody for listening. And I know the capital markets, for those who are focused as investors, been very volatile. Generally, it's been an awful stock market, and cannabis has been tough, but the industry is doing great. Some of the regulatory stuff slowed down a little bit in the last year or two. Like we thought Pennsylvania was going to flip over to adult use sooner than it has. Florida's delayed, but that's all going to change. The states are, because the economy was so good, they all had lots of tax revenues flowing in, and they tend to, some of them do this when they need the tax revenues. But the trend is so pronounced that I think these states will go, and that is going to just cause this market to, the overall cannabis across the country to double and triple. And you have, like you said, these big states like Texas that are really far off, that'll go. Georgia just issued licenses. That's not going to be a real economic state, probably for at least 3 or 4 years before it gets real economic. So you have all these big, economically, well-off states with, I think, much more progressive populations than you think, including Texas, but definitely Georgia. I think you're going to see this industry being a real growth industry for quite a few years, into maybe 7 or 8, 10 years.
I love your positive outlook for Texas. You're definitely a glass half full as opposed to half empty, man. So appreciate that, Jim. I think that you're right. Eventually it will happen. We just don't know when. But yeah, Jim, really appreciate it, man. Where can people find y'all's website and social media if they want to learn more?
Yeah, just plug in Jushi. It's a pretty unique name, and our website's right there. Beyond Hello's our dispensary, and we have I think one of the best websites. We have a great team that does that, led by Dre Newman. It's just a fabulous. I think people love our website, and investors get a ton of information to just dig down a little bit, and hopefully you'll find it user friendly.
Awesome. Shout out to Dre. Well, thanks again. And I'll be sure to include those links at the bottom of the description box for YouTube. So thanks again, Jim. And thank you all for listening.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye.